Howdy y'all, I am Ice Gold, and today, for the first time in a brick, I am going to be doing a Wizard101 and Pirate101 as well, Worlds tier list. And, well, I mean, there's been some changes in my ranking as I have progressed through my Wiz on a Budget walkthrough, and with my budget character being very close to the end of Empyrea Part 1 at the moment, I've gotten a good refresher on all of the worlds that have come out before 2018. So, yeah, I mean, I've got the knowledge for like everything Empyrea Part 2 and past, from like my balance playthrough, and then Selenopolis obviously is new, but everything else, you know, I got a refresher on it pretty recently, so that's what I'm going to be basing it on, just sort of my own enjoyment of all of these, ranking all the worlds in 2025. And, you know, I've also got the pirate worlds here. There's, I guess, been a few updates, like the Crocotopia update for pirate, which was kind of interesting, you know, but we're just going to be going over just everything that is here. So that's what's up. Starting off with Old Wizard City. Oh man, this, I have to say, it's like a nostalgia rush type of thing. That was the main reason why I liked it. But ultimately, I think it's gonna end up in the B tier. I don't like, if I were to play it again today, I'd probably love doing it, just like I said, for the nostalgia rush. But yeah, otherwise, you know, it's I feel like it's gone up since the last time I played through Old Wizard City, just because I miss it, and especially compared to New Wizard City, which will be going into the D tier, because they have sort of, there's been some story beats that have worked out a little better in the New Wizard City, but the old one I do feel like is still superior, just from like a storytelling point of view. But the New Wizard City, it isn't like garbage, but I definitely get a lot less enjoyment out of it. It's like Lord Nightshade is supposed to be the final boss of Wizard City, but then after you beat Lord Nightshade in the New Wizard City, there's like a whole quest line in the Haunted Cave, so I don't know, feels a little contrived. But I think we're going to put New Wizard City in the D tier. Crocotopia is also going to join New Wizard City in the D tier. I'm just not like the biggest fan of it. It's I'm gonna say like D tier is probably a good place for me to put it. It's still, I don't know, it's like the graphics update really like was good for the world, but ultimately from like a gameplay POV, not my favorite. And yeah, but I do think I'll put it above New Wizard City though. I do like it more. So next up is going to be the Selenopolis expansion to Crocotopia, and this I think I'll go ahead and put in the B tier behind Old Wizard City. I liked it for what it's worth. I liked, you know, going back through and meeting, you know, the characters from worlds past. You know, it was a fun little time. It was a fun little time indeed. I liked the Selenopolis storyline. Very cool. And it did have some good foreshadowing for the 5th arc that's upcoming, with the Earthborn character villain thing that's apparently going on. So yeah, Selenopolis going to go in the B tier. Still not really great enough to get into S or A, but it's alright. Marleybone, I think I'll put this one in the C tier. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. I mean, it's an alright world. It's short, which is nice. So I think I'll put Marleybone just in the C tier. Not my absolute favorite, but it does have its good moments. I honestly do still like the Newgate Prison quest, where you're just sort of chasing Meowriarty up and down the rooftops and all that. So I don't know, Marleybone, it's good enough to get above the D tier, in my opinion. So is Mushu, in my honest opinion. I do think that it will be behind Marleybone, but I do like Mushu just in general. It can get repetitive, but in my honest opinion. Mushu should be in the C tier. That's my opinion. I do like some of what it's got going on, but yeah, I mean, Arc 1, I feel like I played it a million times, so you know how it goes. Dragonspire, though, I think just from like a story POV, I'm gonna put it in the A tier. Like, it's probably gonna end up over here in the A tier, like toward the bottom, but I do like it. I mean, it's like the gameplay sort of brings it down a little bit, but the overall storyline, I do really like the storyline of Dragonspire. It's got that sort of epic feeling to it as you're hunting down Malastare, and I like it. Dragonspire, definitely a good world in my opinion. I know that some people's opinions may differ on that, but Dragonspire is my favorite out of the Arc 1 worlds. So Celestia, I think on my last tier list I sort of just dragged this into the F tier without and like skipped straight to Zafaria, but I'll give a little bit of explanation here. Celestia is just not a fun world at all. It doesn't look good. The storyline, I'm not a fan of the storyline. I think Morganth was involved at some point. But overall, it's no fun, and the gameplay is awful. It's like the start of Wiz on a Budget Season 2 was just pure misery before I got my level 50 gear. So yeah, Celestia, die in a fire, even though it's a water world. Zafaria, though, is definitely going to go in the A tier. Maybe it's a bit of a hot take, but I like Zafaria quite a bit. I will put it ahead of Dragonspire. I think this is like a top 8 world, in my honest opinion, just out of all of these. I do like Zafaria a lot. I like the story beats. The gameplay is nice. The only repetitive thing has got to be those Greyhorn mercenaries. I mean, y'all knew I was going to say that. But overall, I like Zafaria a lot, and I'm going to be putting it in the A tier. I do like what it's got going on. Avalon, this is my favorite world. It still holds up, and I know that that's apparently a hot take now, but Avalon, in my genuine opinion, it is so good. I love the theming. The storyline, it's sort of a little detached from Arc 2, sort of in the same way Celestia was, but as a standalone storyline, I think it's like far better than Celestia. So Avalon, it's kind of its own thing, but I really like that about it, and it really executes that well, and, you know, I just really like the story to it. So Avalon going to go into the S tier. Azteca, dude, I don't know. I think I will go ahead and put that in the D tier behind New Wizard City. It's just not fun to play at all, and yeah, Azteca, it's just not fun in the slightest, and yeah, I mean, yeah, it's long, the gameplay sucks until you get Sharpened Blade, and even then it's still a pain in the neck sometimes, because, you know, all the myth mobs, no earthquake, and all the storm mobs can, like, chop your blades and whatnot, so I don't know, it's not fun from a gameplay perspective, and the story only gets good, like, right at the end, so yeah, I also hated soloing Jabalba on my Wiz on a Budget series, so fun, right? So next up is Chrysalis. This is also a hot take, but I mean, Firestarter and I are in agreement on this. Chrysalis going to go in the S tier. It's like the gameplay really isn't bad at all, and you do have Darkmoor like halfway through, so you know, it's fun. I really like Chrysalis, and you know, the gameplay is pretty alright. It's way better than Azteca. The bosses in Chrysalis have less health than Azteca, which I think was a good design choice. And even though it's very, very long, I do think that it is worthy of getting into the S tier. And now that there are separate entries for Part 1 and 2, I can sort of delve into that a little bit more. I do think that Part 1 is worthy of the A tier, probably ahead of Dragonspire, but behind Zafaria, at least for the moment. I honestly like the story in Part 1. It's sort of like, you get there, and you're trying to, like, figure everything out. You're sort of like on an undercover mission, except not really. It's like, I really like the part where you free the Eclipse Tower. That sort of sequence, that cutscene, I really love it. I always will. Love that part of Chrysalis Part 1, and just sort of freeing Bastion. It's like that's sort of the goal in part 1, and I really like that about it, and just sort of undoing Morganth's work, just sort of chipping away at it, that sort of thing. And I think that part 1 of Chrysalis does a really great job at it, but it does get a little repetitive with the back and forth. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I fought, blue razors, flame legs, all those. It's like, anytime you get sent to the last wood, you kind of expect to be fighting those. But overall, story POV, very good, very, very strong. But it's like, just from a gameplay POV, this probably falls a little, and it might be like maybe top 8 to 10, that type of deal, just out of every entry on here. And speaking of every entry, there's 40 images here, so that means, yeah, just out of 40, the top quarter, I guess. quite nice. It's a good showing for Chrysalis. But next up, we've got part 2, and where I liked part 1 for its sort of, I guess, feel to it, where you're sort of chipping away at Morganth's work, part 2 is where you really kick it into gear, and that's where you go after her. And I think that part 2 does a really, really good job at that. It sort of shows you stopping at all the places, the Radiant Alcazar, it's like restoring that was a whole thing, and then it's like you free Sardonyx. I mean, the 5th column like completely just throws that whole city into chaos. But it's like Sardonyx falls, and then you go out through the Conda Desert and you free the Solar Arc, and then you get to the Hive and just sort of like kick the ass of everybody. And that, I think, is just a really, really good part of part 2, and I love part 2 so much. And it's like I've been saying, part 2 is long, but it is absolutely worth, and I like it a lot. It's going to go in the S tier without a shadow of a doubt, and it is going to be what brings Chrysalis up into the S tier. I think I will move Chrysalis back down a little bit, just so that way it evens out a little bit. But I think it goes Avalon, Chrysalis Part 2, Chrysalis, and then we will go into what follows Chrysalis after. So for the time being, it is not actually Polaris. We will talk about that in a bit, but Polaris is absolutely worthy of the S tier. It is such a fun little world. It's nice and short. It's like, I love Chrysalis, but I'm always so happy to be going to Polaris afterwards. Like, I will say that. It's a nice little break, and, the gameplay really changes up a lot in Polaris compared to the past 2 arcs, and I honestly do like it quite a bit. It's probably like a top 5 world. It's like, if I wasn't counting the separate parts of Chrysalis, then Polaris would probably be like my 4th or 5th favorite, something like that. But I really like Polaris, and I think everybody does. I think it's kind of a cold take to have Polaris in the S tier, but I mean, it's for good reason. Everybody loves Polaris, and yeah, I mean, it's very easy to see why. Anybody who has played through Polaris, like 95% of people who play through Polaris love it, and I can totally understand why that is. So Polaris, for me, also going to be going up here in the S tier. Love it to death. Polaris, definitely a very good world. Mirage is also going to be entering the S tier. I think I might have put it like right at the border of A and S, but like in the A tier on my last list. But I think Mirage, after just having played through it again for my budget walkthrough, definitely worthy of the S tier. I love Mirage. Gotta say, it's like my 5th favorite world out of everything. And yeah, I mean, Mirage is just so good. I love Mirage, and just all the story beats to it. It's like you start by sort of like bringing life to Caravan, and then you go to Agrabah, and it's like you resolve the whole gang takeover there, and then you go to the House Cats, and that's an interesting little storyline. I do like it. And it's sort of like you're assembling the Avengers for the fight with Overlord Xerxes, who ends up turning out to be Scorpion. Like, you fight the Rat in Polaris, and then the Scorpion in Mirage. And after that, I mean, it throws the plot twist of a lifetime. I mean, it's like Spider's other agents have been working on this whole thing. It's like, you think that it's not a threat after you beat the Scorpion, but then you figure out that it is absolutely a threat, and yeah, I mean, that's sort of like, I really like how Mirage ends. It's such a good world, and I really love it. Once y'all see episodes 4, 5, and 6 of Budget Walk's 4th season, y'all are going to see like just how great Mirage's story is, and the gameplay as well is not like terrible. So I think that gets it into the S tier. I just think I like the other worlds more. I cannot say Mirage's praises enough. It is such a good world. But now we're on to Empyrea, and I have to say, Empyrea got to be my 3rd favorite world, behind Avalon and Chrysalis. It's like, this has apparently become a hot take. I know that people loved Empyrea back in the day, like when it was releasing and all that, but it seems as though people have soured on it a bit. And I think part of that comes from part 1, but I like part 1 a lot. And maybe that's just my nostalgia bias or whatever talking, but the first time I ever maxed a character was my Ice Wizard, like a few weeks before part 2 hit test realm. So for me to be like maxing a character for the first time in the 7 years at that point that I had played the game, that was pretty good. Like, that was pretty cool. I loved getting to Empyrea and just finishing up and finally having a max wizard. It's like, that was such an experience, just maxing a wizard for the first time, and now I've maxed it again for part 2, Caramel, obviously, you know, Lemuria 3, Novus 4, Wallaru 5. So yeah, but I mean, Empyrea part 1, that was the first time I'd ever maxed a character, and I honestly love the story beats in Empyrea part 1. It's like, the aerial jungle does bring me a lot of nostalgia for those days, and then Xanadu is sort of its own thing. I wasn't too big of a fan of fighting storm mobs in Xanadu. Anybody who's seen the streams knows this, but yeah, the gameplay sort of, I feel like it's a step down from Mirage, but still, I mean, I really love it a lot. And getting to Athenor and that whole thing, and then it's like you rush to, you know, the Temple of Light, and then Sepidius and Medulla, and it's a whole thing. I mean, part 1 is a journey, and I really, really love it. So part 1, I think it is going to be worthy of the A tier, probably also in the top 10, just out of the 40 entries on this list. So Empyrea part 1 definitely getting up there. Empyrea part 2, I think, is worthy of getting up here. So it goes Avalon, then Chrysalis part 2, then Empyrea part 2, then Chrysalis, then Empyrea overall. And yeah, part 2 of Empyrea, it's been a minute since I've gone back to it, and I'm like just about to finish with part 1 on my budget walkthrough character, which I should be streaming later today, barring, you know, my neighbors throwing a rager or my roommates' friends coming over and yelling racial epithets for hours on end until 2 a.m. like they did last night. That's why I didn't stream last night. That was fun. But yeah, so Empyrea part 2, peak. I like, without a doubt. Empyrea part 2 was so amazing. And I mean, subscribe if you haven't, because once we get to Empyrea part 2, which I'm going to be streaming throughout next week, y'all are going to see just how good it is. And anybody who's played through it likes it too. Like, people, where people have soured on Empyrea a little bit because of part 1, part 2 really has kept the community's perception of Empyrea above water, and I think that, like, that's totally fair. I mean, Empyrea part 2 really, really carries the world. It's where, you know, the story of Arc 3 really comes to a head, and I mean, just everything leading up to that final battle against the Storm Titan's Trident, I mean, it is so good. And I mean, this is also where, like, part 2 is where the lines sort of blur a bit. It's like, who is the real villain? Is it Raven or Spider? And it's like, up to that point you think it's Spider, but you know, maybe they're doing the same thing just with different motives, that type of deal. It's like, I really like that part about part 2. Really amazing. Love Empyrea just overall, but it does get in right behind Chrysalis. So there's that. But yeah, I think I've waxed poetic about the best worlds for too long, because Caramel, I think, is going to be another entry into the D tier. I think I might put it ahead of New Wizard City, if I could ever get it there. Right, so Caramel, I've sort of soured on this a little bit. It's It's definitely not my favorite world, and I used to have a relatively positive perception of it, but it's just not really my favorite, and it sort of set the tone for Arc 4. It's like people tend to think that Arc 4's writing is just like a little subpar compared to the other arcs, and I wholeheartedly agree. But Caramel was sort of like a prequel to the overarching story of Arc 4, and I wasn't really too into it. It's like Celestia had the same problem, and I think Avalon is the only world so far that we've covered where just as a standalone it's really good. So yeah, I mean, I think it's like Caramel is better than Celestia, but yeah, I mean, it's still just not really my favorite. So yeah, it's like just as its own, it's its own thing, but I'm not really too big of a fan of that. So yeah, Caramel going in the D tier. Lemuria, I think, is worthy of... Where do we want to put this? I think from a story POV, it might get up here. And I do like Lemuria. It is my favorite of the Arc 4 worlds, but it does end up considerably below everything. So Lemuria, I think, is worthy of A tier. I do like the overall theme of it. We really get introduced to Dasein in this world, and it's really the only world where he has a presence. Like, I'm gonna say that right now. It's like Novus is him, but Lemuria is like the only world where we really get to know him and sort of see what he's about. And I liked his character a lot. I think it was a real highlight of the 4th arc, but like Lemuria was the only time where we ever got to see that, and I think like that really brought it up. And the heroes of Lemuria, I loved all 8 of them. It was like real great, but it's like Lemuria is kind of the dark horse of Arc 4. It's the only world that's really above water, and I think Novus is going to end up in the C tier for that reason. Novus, it's my second favorite world of Arc 4. But it is only worthy of the C tier in my opinion. I just am not the biggest fan of some of what's going on there. But yeah, Novus, I think it's like there's some parts where I like what's going on, like Mubu, just in general, real great character, definitely a highlight of the world. But for a lot of them, not really. So yeah, it's like it's got its own things to it that I think are better than the worlds below it, but yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's kind of a far cry from Selenopolis, so there's that. And Wallaru is going to be going in right there behind Novus. I do think that there's some interesting things going on with Wallaru, but just not really into it as much, I guess. And the themes in it, it's like as a standalone story, Wallaru was kind of weak. But as a conclusion to Arc 4, it did resolve Dasein. Like, it did resolve Dasein's story, and I did like that, and I really liked... My favorite part of Wallaru was probably where we got to hear about the origins of the Cabal, but that came, like, right at the end, of course, so there was that. But Wallaru, I think C tier is a good place to put Wallaru. Not my favorite, but not my least favorite either, so Wallaru, C tier is what it is there. So those are all of the storyline worlds complete, but now we're going to go on to the side worlds, and we're going to start with Wisteria. I do like Wisteria. I think it's going to go in behind everything in the B tier at the moment, but Wisteria, I like it. What can I say? Wisteria is so good for a side world, but you know, it's like I love the idea of the Spiral Cup, but yeah, I mean, just as like a side world, kind of its own thing, but I do still like it. Wisteria good, pretty much, is what I'm getting at. So next up, we've got Grizzleheim, and I think this is worthy of the B tier as well. I definitely don't hate it. I used to, I think, but just like from a story perspective, I like Grizzleheim, and I think I'll put it ahead of Wisteria, actually. But the gameplay, not my favorite, and I think the same can be said for Wintertusk. Storyline, great. Gameplay, not so much. But overall, these two worlds, I like them a lot. I think they are worthy of B tier, and I've got nostalgia for them too. Love to see that. Next up is Aquila, and this is different from Pirate Aquila, so yeah. But I don't think that there's enough to Aquila to really put it too high. I mean, I like Tartarus a lot. Like, Tartarus is probably one of my favorite dungeons just in the game. But I think I'll put it at the back of C tier, just because it's like, what I do like about it is good, but ultimately it's just 3 dungeons. And it doesn't really have, like, it's not really my favorite. Nothing really stands out too much, and there's not really like a story to any of it. And the 4 dungeons that we're about to get into do have a story to them, and those, it's like, that's why I really like those. So we're going to start off with Kembalung, and I like the story here. I'm going to say it. I like the story here. I think it's worthy of B tier. Pretty neat. Just, it's like, it's kind of its own thing. I did do this in my budget walkthrough not too long ago. Or I guess it was like a year ago now, but anyway. I do think Kembalung, I think that's worthy of B tier. So how it is. I like Kembalung. And it really looks beautiful too. Like, I took my Max Ice PvP thumbnail there, and it was like, it really is just a stunning world. Or I guess a stunning part of Mushu, I guess. So, Kembalung Village, worthy of B tier. I do like the story that it's got going on. Barkingham, not so much in that regard. I think it is going to end up below Aquila. Matter of fact, I might even put it like here. But yeah, Barkingham just wasn't really too into it as I was with Kembalung. House of Scales, though, I think I'll put it here. I do like the story with House of Scales that it's got going on. Just really, really great. Love it. Love to see that. But yeah, House of Scales. It's got like it's got a good story to it. You know, like lower zigzag, just sort of like reaping the souls of the dead, I guess. That sort of thing is kind of interesting. But yeah, second favorite of the 4 dungeons, because Darkmoor goes all the way up here. I love the story to Darkmoor. It's the only time we ever see this game take a darker turn to it, and that, I think, that sets it apart, in my opinion. It's like, it's a breath of fresh air, and the themes to it, love it, really love it. And I mean, it's short and sweet. The 3 Darkmoor dungeons, but I mean, dude, it's such a good story to it. And like, the overall resolution with Malistaire, just, I mean, it is so amazing and well done, and I love it so much. So Darkmoor definitely gets into the S tier for that reason. Catacombs, I honestly really love these too. The storyline here, it's like, it's not on the level that Darkmoor was, but I do like Catacombs a lot, and the gameplay is certainly something. But I did like the Catacombs. It sort of starts off all innocent, but then you get into like the deeper stuff that's going on with like Dragonspire and all that, and I really like it. And Catacombs, I think, is worthy of the A tier. So there you go. Those are all of the Wiz worlds and expansions. So now it is time for the Pirate 101 worlds. And please don't click away. I promise these are good. But we're going to start with Skull Island. And I've played Skull Island a bunch, but I don't know. Personally, I think it's worthy of C tier. Like the top of C tier. Yeah. And then so is Monquista, I think, getting in right behind Skull Island. So these two, they're good. They're definitely very good. Pirate Worlds are typically at a higher caliber, but Skull Island and Monquista, just really, really good. And I like them a lot. What can I say? So yeah, it's just they do sort of drag at times, and there's some quests that sort of feel kind of contrived, but overall, Skull Island and Monquista both, I sort of like them and dislike them for the same reasons. So C tier is where they'll end up. Valencia Part 1, I think I'll put at the back of B tier. It's very short, but what's there is good, and I do like it. So yeah, Valencia Part 1, there you go, B tier. So next up is Cool Ranch, and this one's very good. I will put it in the A tier. Really, really amazing world, and I mean, it's very long. It's sort of like the Chrysalis of Pirate 101, but I love the themes to it, and just the overall story to it. It's like you're after Captain Blood for most of the world, and you're also like racing against the Armada and all that. And all of the little mini storylines, like Tumbleweed is peak. Like, just, it's so good. And then it's like you've also got like the Big Sky type deal. Like the Duck of Death showdown was so good, like so well executed. And then Port Regal happens in the middle of it after the Duck of Death, and I liked the story going on in Port Regal too. So what can I say there? But yeah, I definitely am glad to be done with it, because next up following it is Mushu, and Pirate Mushu is so good. I mean, it is so well executed, and I mean, the length of it is honestly good. I like it a lot. So Pirate Mushu, so much better than Wiz Mushu. They sort of ended up in the same column, but yeah, man, I mean, if y'all have not played through Pirate 101, definitely do it, if just for the sake of doing Pirate Mushu. Like, I'm so for real. So Pirate Mushu definitely going to end up there in the S tier, and Pirate Marleybone is going to be right in there behind it. These two worlds are so much better executed compared to their Wiz counterparts. It's like, I love what they did here, and I mean, it is so amazing what they've done. And just the stories with these, amazing. Love them so much. And yeah, I mean, they're just sort of wow. You kind of have to play them to understand it. So there is that. For Pirate Aquila, I honestly like this one a lot. It might be a bit of a hot take, but I will go ahead and put it in the A tier. Love it, honestly. It's like the gameplay is sort of kind of with the ship fighting quests, but overall, Aquila, I do think I'm going to say is worthy of the A tier. Getting in between Lemuria and the Catacombs, I think that's a good place to put it. For Valencia Part 2, maybe top of B. I do like Valencia Part 2, like, honestly, quite a bit. It's like, it was kind of rushed, but what is there, it's like I've been saying, you know, what is there is good. So Valencia Part 2, I think I'm going to go ahead and put in at the top of B tier. So that is going to complete our list. This is my ranking of every single world and expansion in Wizard and Pirate 101. So, I mean, I love a lot of these worlds so much. So, yeah, man, I think, I don't know. Let me know y'all's thoughts in the comment section. If, like, I know I've got some hot takes going on here, but you know how it goes. Just is what it is. It whiz what it whiz. So, there you go. Finished tier list. What can I say? So, with that in mind, thank y'all for watching. I have been Ice Gold. Be sure to like, subscribe, and of course, leave like 50 comments for the algorithm. My Discord is down in the description if you want to chat with me some more. And I will see y'all later.